It's the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. I'm Laurie Rivers, your host, here to help you with some inspiration to get those aspirations out into the world. And I know it started off crunchy like I said it would, and it can be hard to find inspiration sometimes, but I'm hoping this episode will give you some go-go juice for that this week. Now, this is a jam-packed episode, my friends. That's why it's so long. I give you this week's astrology, what to expect in the headlines. That's in the first segment. Then I do our patron shout-outs. You want to listen to that because I'm giving you updates about what's happening in Patreon and what's up on deck starting this week for you and your bunnies, because I'm giving some good ones this month. Then I have astrologer Kaycee Felton-Lui talking about her most recent podcast episode where she went through Madeline Pendleton's astrology chart in relation to the book that she published. If you don't know who Madeline Pendleton is, you sure will by the end of that interview. We're talking about how astrology helps liberate in that segment. And then of course I do some patron Q&A. I answer questions that patrons have submitted about astrology and other modalities. And then I have a special guest, and I wonder if you can figure out who it is. We might be playing a game. And then I give you the lowdown on what the energy of this new moon is bringing, and I promise you it's magic. All right, I told you March was going to start off with a bang. Before I get to the astrology for the week, I want to bring something up. So, both Matilda and I have talked about it individually and on our podcasts and in our discussions with each other and on our live streams that we have found when we do any kind of political predicting on TikTok and other social media platforms, we are getting choked. Like, our views are choked. And we're not big into views and numbers. We serve for who we serve. We believe those who will find us will find us. And I'm going to bring it back just talking about my own experience, but I'm going to say we share similar values. And guys, it's gotten bad. I've been warning about this coming up, that we need to think like the French Resistance versus the French Revolution. You know, pitchforks and torches are not going to get us through 2024, 2025, 2026, through to 2024. They might work in 2024 or 2044, but not this year, not next year. And what concerns me is I made a video on TikTok right after Nex was killed. And I made a video adjacent to the issue without talking about the issue because I knew it could be considered kind of iffy on TikTok. So I just made a factual video and said you cannot see gender in a birth chart, and you can't. You cannot see biological sex, and you cannot see gender in a birth chart. Fun fact. I went to boost the post because organic views have been really hard to come by lately because they're pushing the TikTok shop. And they denied it. Like, the ad was being reviewed. I was going to put like $20 on it, right? They denied it. It took hours and hours and hours, and finally they said denied. For political content. But nothing in that video was political. Okay? Gender and the discussion of gender is an academic topic. And the fact that it got labeled political because of the right-wing false moral outrage in this country absolutely PO'd me. I also have shared probably one too many videos about what's going on overseas. So, there is one place on the interwebs that I can talk about this with a fair amount of freedom and impunity, and that is my Patreon. Whatever subject, whatever kind of politics, whether it's domestic politics, global politics, talking about gender issues, social equality, topics of liberation, etc., I can do it on my Patreon. So I want to encourage you to join my Patreon for free. For free. And I'll be posting a lot more free content as well as my paid content for the patrons who support what I do out in the world. I'm bummed because TikTok was so fun in 2020, 2021, because it reminded me of the old internet before the corporate world got in there and screwed it up. Back in the 90s and the early 2000s, back in the Wild West of the internet, pre-2012 internet, when you could really organically reach people and it wasn't a numbers game and you didn't have to be a math wizard or plunk a whole lot of money in to meet people and get to know people and find people that you aligned with. The internet was created to bring us together, not to tear us apart. And the minute the corporations started sliding in, I knew it was going to go downhill. So I really want to encourage you guys to join my Patreon for free. You certainly can join as a paying member. There's lots of perks. However, I will be posting, beyond my, hey, here's the podcast, I'll be posting some stuff up there just to make sure people see it. And my content is changing on TikTok. I've changed direction. I'm like, fine, TikTok, I will play your game, because I will make content that seems nonsensical or light or just entertainment and drive people to the podcast where they can hear the real deal. Oh. And I may, and for real sensitive topics, I don't even bring it here to the free podcast. That's for paying patrons only. I put it behind a paywall. Does it mean somebody who might not have good intentions isn't paying for my Patreon? Of course, it could be. But if you're going to troll me or you're going to snoop, you're going to pay me. Period. How radical it is to teach people how valuable they are and that they matter. That's a radical thing. In fact, it's the most radical thing I know. It's the most radical thing I can think of doing, is teaching people how valuable they are. I'm frustrated. I'm still angry that it was the gender video. And then I made a follow-up video. You guys, oh. I make a follow-up video. I go to share that in DMs with mutuals, and it disappeared. It acted like I deleted it. It was still on my page, but they acted like I deleted it. For real. That's creepy, and it made my blood kind of run cold. And then the other night when I went live with Matilda, and that live stream is up on Patreon for free, so go check that out. That was fun. She needs to do some more live streams before we can co-host. So bug her, if you're in her audience as well, bug her to go live more so we can co-host. But anyway, we had just said we needed to be careful about what we spoke about. And then the minute we did that, and I don't get this, if you guys are in our live audiences and we say, hey, we're having to be careful about what we talk about, and then you bring up every sensitive political issue, guys, you're risking us losing our live stream privileges. Okay? It happens. And then we can't be of service to other people. We keep talking about this. You know, you can't do that to us. It's not just what we say. It can happen by what you say in our live streams. And yes, it's censorship. And yes, it's scary. And no, it's not okay. And it's not just TikTok. It would happen on Facebook. It would happen on Instagram. It wouldn't matter at this point. Okay. So don't do that to us, because we got a content violation warning, even though we were being very, very careful about what we said, because we had talked about it before we went live, because we're both feeling it, and so are other content creators. In fact, I just saw a video by Kaycee the astrologer, who's my guest today. In fact, I have Kaycee and Matilda on the podcast today, which I told you about in the introduction that I've been recording after these. But anyway, Kaycee was doing to get her views up, knowing that they're pushing the TikTok shop, use the Gafia, the Palestinian Gafia, and they took it down off the shop. And so Kaycee's going to be posting more in her Patreon for free, and so is Matilda. Okay, a lot of us are, because we don't have to rely on a freaking algorithm. And two, as long as we're within the guidelines of Patreon, which are pretty simple, we're fine. You know, it's really hard to break those guidelines. You have to be deliberately working hard at it, because Patreon is dedicated to creative expression. Can't be hate speech. It can't be ugly stuff, but you got a lot of wiggle room, and you really have to push the envelope for them to be like, no. So there's that. So I save my most sensitive content for video only on Patreon, so it doesn't even slip into Spotify for the Patreon only podcast, which is all it is on Spotify. And then I'm also very, very careful here on this podcast. I talk around subjects when I think they're overly sensitive. So that is my big announcement to you guys. I can tell you from my own personal makeup, my desire to stand on a street corner and sound like a crazy person at this point is very, very strong. But it won't help me meet my objective. And my objective is to help people, because as ugly as the politics are in front of us right now, there are other things more pressing that nobody's talking about. One of those being climate change. That's the thing I'm worried most about. And you need to be so, supple and innovative and adaptable to meet the future. And my goal, I don't know that I can prepare people any more than I prepared it, but I can embolden you. I can support you. I can inspire you. I can be your bard if you play D&D. I can be your bard. All right, let's talk about what's coming up this week. I got the magazine out early Sunday morning. I tried to get it done by Saturday, guys. I worked on it all day, and it just didn't happen. So I do have a really cool section. Our intermediate students, some of them gave me permission to post their homework, which were wonderful writings about their Venus placements. That was one of the homework assignments a couple weeks ago, and they were all so good. I was going to have them vote on the winning one, but they were all so good. I was like, okay, whoever wants in the magazine, I'm going to put you in. I'm calling it Laurie's fridge, because if I could, my fridge sucks for putting magnets on. But if I could put fridge magnets with all their homework on and print it out, I would, because I'm that proud. Everybody did a phenomenal job. So I'm going to read to you my thoughts for the month out of the magazine. I'm not going to read the summary, but I'll read my thoughts, and then I'll tell you what to expect this week. Thoughts for the month. It doth be wild. Laurie Rivers. March is wild. It's in like a lion, and it's out like a screaming eagle that flies face first into a wall. Yes, I know you're tired. Me too. Everyone is tired. Yet we're all being galvanized into action. Let's talk about the word galvanize. Here's the definition according to Merriam-Webster Dictionary. Galvanized, galvanizing, synonyms for galvanize, the transitive verb. 1. To subject to the action of an electric current, especially for the purpose of stimulating physiologically, galvanize a muscle. Okay. So kind of like, with the frog in science class and you zzz, and it makes the muscle jump. Yeah. We're all that's kind of what's happening to us. To stimulate or excite as if by electric shock. Okay. Zzz. With Venus and Mars in an approaching square to Uranus, we are indeed being galvanized, shocked into action. And I suggest you get your own house in order, which includes your backyard and your neighborhood. I'm not saying for you to ignore world events or to turn a blind eye. That is not the point. The point is things are going to get wild. Weather continues to be chaotic. Politics continues to be nonsensical and full of posturing. Layoffs will continue to roll out in the tech and financial sectors. The service industry is getting hit as well, and it's time for people to work together, like I've been saying. Look, for people to work together. Look for people turning jobs into cooperatives, making alliances, co-working situations. Assess your skills and start building something that can help bring you in some extra cash. As boycott movements grow and profits dip from overstretched wallets, the Fed will probably be faced with having to cut rates, or will be talking about it by the end of March. Keep what cash you can on hand. There's going to be lots of disruptions of internet, computer networks, and systems, and payment gateways. None of this is permanent, but it is a pain in the neck. Speaking of transportation, speaking of pains in the necks, transportation will be very disrupted the first week of the month, but will smooth out just before the new moon. However, between the 1st and the 9th, expect to hear about strange accidents in trucking and rail, labor disputes, or technical difficulties in airports and with airlines. And there could be issues in maritime transport, including navies, from the middle to the end of the month. Pull your attention onto your present moment. Put your focus on innovation, radical acceptance of self. Keep away from gossip and celebrity news. It's a distraction from doing what you need to do for you. If you feel like taking action, understand there are many roles to take, and one of the most subversive is radical self-acceptance. Don't let them market you into a panic or a frenzy. And that's exactly what they're going to use Trump for. Okay? So let's look at what's in the headlines. March 2nd through the 4th. Issue with Trump's family or home. Arsons with wildfires, bushfires, high winds, treaties, trade agreements, and international law or international organizations in the headlines. High courts or a federal or a lawyer judge in the headlines. Could be a high-profile case. maritime incidents, accidents, and issues or issues in ports, climbing or hiking accident, rockslide, landslide, or issue in national park, public lands, espionage, intelligence agencies, accusations of spying, treason, breach of agreements, increased seismic activity in all seismic zones, issue with radiation or toxins, escalation of existing tensions worldwide, wherever there is tension, like a borders dispute, etc., use of drones or sea-to-air missiles, accidents with missiles and or satellite launches, tensions rise in Taiwan Straits and South China Sea, data breach, information leaks, issue with publishers, newspapers, or journalists, or censorship in the news, legal proceedings, and high-profile case might be announced on Monday. Church official under investigations. Citizen armies may rally in attempt to defend Palestine. It could be, but I think they're holding that back. All right, March 4th through the 6th, erosion causing storms, tornadoes, changing temperatures, thaws, or freezes, depends on the location. World leaders at odds, world powers under pressure, and that would be the United States, Great Britain, Germany, France, etc. Economic or trade sanctions announced by Global Alliance. That could be BRICS against the United States or NATO countries. Infrastructure failures, roads, bridges, dams, buildings, rail systems, power grids, and water systems, so stuff like that. Workers' rights and strikes or union busting is up in the news. Big corporation or financial institution has a big loss or a failure. That could be a private equity firm as well. Increased seismic activity of up to a 6.5 offshore. Private equity firms in trouble. Look at that, I did it twice. Glaciers and issues with the north-south poles. We could see some big melts. Big layoffs from major corporations and or retailer. No confidence vote in British Commonwealth country or a cabinet shakeup. European Union has a crisis. New alliance announced between countries. Leader deposed or a coup d'etat or a world leader dies or there's a push against a power base. BRICS nations could make moves to financially undercut current market space, celebrity scandal, or breakup, issue with maritime transportation. And that could be like a cruise ship, anything to do with the sea. March 6th through the 8th, arsons, wildfire bushes, bushfires, big lightning and thunder, issue with internet or cell towers, networks. By the way, with those big lightning storms, there's going to be some big hail too. Tech sector volatile, issues with AI, more layoffs, strange windstorms, dust storms, sandstorms, lightning, hail, changing temperatures, and surprise frost or freeze. Surprise announcement regarding political leader, figure, elected official. Could see health crisis for older statesmen or a government official. Bad news for Trump on the 7th. Power plant, chemical plant accidents. Seismic activity between a 6.0 and a 7.5. Southeast Asia, New Zealand, South Pacific, South America. That's my best guess. It could be any active seismic zone, anywhere in the Ring of Fire, Mediterranean, any active fault line, guys. So, Japan, Alaska, off the coast of the Pacific Northwest. All markets are volatile, including crypto. We could see a correction because things have been rising, so we might see a correction happen. It'd be profit taking. It'll probably sort itself out. Merger not allowed to go through because of anti-monopoly laws. Issues with publishers, newspapers, or journalists. Missiles, rockets, and drones misfire or accidentally strike sensitive targets. High-speed rail issues. That could include friendly fire in active combat zones. Air accidents, issues with air traffic control, military helicopter, mechanical failure, electrical failures, or equipment and machinery failures. If you work with machines, be careful. March 8th through the 10th, COVID and other viruses in the headlines. We could see new mask mandates, no lockdowns, dam breach, severe weather, big rain, espionage exposed. Flooding. We could see some big flooding. We got a lot of Pisces energy going on, and we could even see some dam breaches. Sensitive information is leaked, or a whistleblower speaks out. Church leaders exposed. Toxic waste, poison, water supply issues, sewage damaged, or damaged sewers, or issues with spills, banking, private equity, or investment defaults, maritime accidents, and issues with ships and Navy vessels. I think we could see some issues around the Pope's health or another religious figure. And it's serious. Matters to do with radiation, leaks, exposure, weapons, not nuclear war. We can see naval skirmishes, shipping, boating accidents, sleeper cells revealed, or people accused of spying and charged with crimes. Drug cartels will be in the news. Poisoning, poison darts, bad drugs like lace stuff, hospital closures, or overburdened healthcare system. Pharmaceuticals are going to be in the news, and we could see some breakthroughs in treatments. So that's what we've got this first week of March. That's up. If you want to know what everything else you can expect in the month, you can join the Patreon at the $15 level and up and get the magazine. Oh, lordy. I got a couple of articles in here. I did one on the lunar eclipse. I'll have one in the April issue for the solar eclipse. And of course, I'll talk about that at the end of March. I'll have the solar eclipse episode up, because the solar eclipse, of course, happens April 8th. It drags Trump, though. Spoiler alert. Yeah. As my patrons were reminded of, because I did a special drops in the Patreon. We did a video release on Saturday, and everybody got to watch my live reactions, and I think people really enjoyed my reaction to his 2024 solar return. Oh, it's a good life. So there was that. So this is what we've got going on. I'm going to do a patron shout out next. And you know what? I'm just going to do a patron shout out next. That's what I'm going to do. We have a lot of new patrons that I need to welcome. So let's do that. Now, you don't want to skip over it. You can fast forward it, but I'll be talking about some cool patron bennies this month. Did you guys know there's over 15,000 podcasts on Patreon? 15,000 that have one paying supporter or more. Did you know the Awake Space is like 412 on the list of podcasts? I was looking up our stats on a third-party website, and I just thought that was really cool. Out of 15,000? Are you kidding? That's pretty cool. So I'm really proud of us. And you make that possible. You make that possible. So I want to thank every single person who has supported us currently or in the past. But here's our latest patrons. We've got Cynthia, Mandy, Catherine, Melissa, Lauren, Kristen, Deborah, Jelena, Tracy, Katie, Melly, Ellie, Sonia, Olivia, Stacy, Joan, Kayla, Dylan, EU, Susan, Julie, Tiffany, Rachel, Christy, Olivia offline, Michelle, Casey, Lizzie, Cindy, Christian, Sarah P., Brittany, Shelby, Shan, Lauren, E, Haley, PK, Becca, Katie, Cindy, MK, Ominous Roses, Jordan, GP, Rebecca, Michelle, Holly, Amber, Amanda, and Heather Cox. I want to thank all of you guys for joining us. Thank you so much. This month, because I give special patron discounts every month, I'll be teaching an introduction to relationship astrology next Saturday. And I want you guys to keep your eye on Patreon. You're going to get your special discount around that. I'm going to do another round of healing the money wound. That class is just inspiring me because so many people are having such big aha moments, and I just want to share one with you. I'm super excited about this. I'm not going to blow anybody's anonymity, but let's see, let me get to it. Let's see. There was a really big aha in here today. Okay. All right. This is from one of the students, and if, I know you listen, but I'm not going to mention your name because I don't have permission, but I'm just going to share this. Just had a big breakthrough. One of my wounds is that I identify with is number 2. Now we have a list of ways our money wound expresses, and so there's this number 2 on the list: traumatic events. In my case, it's job loss. My dad lost his job when I was small, and that changed much for us. I am always scared that money is just going to disappear. I have Libra on my second house, and so one of my key words is social. When I got to the part about what do I really love doing, I thought about how I love spending time with my friends and laughing. I realized that I've been holding them at a distance, though, since the pandemic, because I'm afraid they'll disappear too, like the money. I try to adopt a sort of laissez-faire attitude towards money, and that's what I've been doing with my friends for the past 4 years. That's huge. What a huge awareness, because again, when we talk about the money wound, it's really a social wound. Money is just one part of our second house, which deals with resources. Love is a resource. Our networks are resources. Food, water, shelter can come in lots of different ways. We just happen to use money to get those things. And the sign on the second house cusp often describes how we attract resources to it. So somebody with Libra really does need that social connection to make things work for them fully and abundantly. So I wanted to thank you, you know who you are, for sharing that in the class portal. That's the type of insight people are having that helps them identify and then work on how to make themselves more resilient, more secure, and yeah, hopefully more abundant financially. It's usually a byproduct of other things. But even if, nobody's going to be a bajillionaire from this. But what we will do is have maybe stronger social connections, be able to resource better, be more resilient in challenging times, which isn't strength. It's the ability to bounce back in adverse circumstances. And we will be seeing a fair amount of that. So we want to be able to be at our most adaptable, innovative, and secure inside ourselves. When you know yourself and you love yourself, that's the most radical thing that can be, because you're really hard to take down at that point. All right. If you're a patron, you're going to hear more about what you're getting discount-wise, and I'll make some other special announcements because I'm going to be traveling second part of the month, and it's a long time coming. And yeah. So I'll open up my schedule a little bit in this first and second week of March, and then I'm going to shut her down for a bit. But we are going to do some group readings. Now, next Saturday is already full, but I thought I might do some evening ones too. So just stay tuned. I'm still making up my mind as I record this. Once I have this posted out to the world, that information will be up on Patreon. I have astrologer Kaycee Felton-Lui with me today, and we're going to talk about how astrology can be used to free ourselves from a whole lot of stuff. Hey, Kaycee, how you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing excellent, thank you. So we're living in some weird times.
Yeah, I guess you could say that, huh?
And I've been enjoying your content on the podcast Petty Astrology.
Oh, thank you.
You're doing a hell of a job. I really loved what you were talking about Madeline Pendleton. Can you talk a little bit about that episode and what prompted you to do it?
Yeah. So Madeline Pendleton is somebody that I came to know through TikTok, and they have amassed, I believe, 1.8 million followers. So, quite a lot of people. And they are a very, alternative looking person.
Hmm.
Very just like, I mean, they're a fashion designer. So that I think comes into play. Like that, I think is part of why, the visual element.
Hmm.
She's very interesting looking.
Yeah, super cute.
Yeah, yeah. And she just
Hmm.
like visually they're a trend
Hmm.
bucker,
Hmm.
so they also give a lot of really great advice on TikTok and have kind of like a big sibling vibe, I would
Hmm.
say, especially
Hmm.
because TikTok, as we know, has been really targeted towards Gen Z and associated with Gen Z. And I think that they are pretty big fans of Madeline, who is a millennial, a few years older than me. And so I was interested in them, and they recently released a book where she talked about her life story in relationship to money. And because they are somebody that grew up quite poor in Central California,
Hmm.
they've had, a really interesting relationship with money. And
Hmm.
fortunately for me, they put their astrology chart up because people were asking at a certain point,
Hmm.
what was going on with the chart. And so I saved that information for a rainy day, and it just turned out to be, when this book came out. So
Hmm.
I was ready to talk about it, and I was looking forward to the book, and they have a very similar political ideology to me. I don't think we're
Hmm.
like 100% aligned, of course, but we have very similar perspectives on the world. We're both anti-capitalist. So, it felt like a good place for me to, investigate. And also, we're both Cap Moons. So that was another
Oh,
draw for
I am
me.
so not surprised she has a cat moon.
Right? Yeah.
Hmm.
Also,
Hmm.
Cap Mars. So a very financial chart
Hmm.
as well. That
Hmm.
was something that
Hmm.
we talked about. So it's funny because she said herself in the book, like, I think about money probably more than anybody I know, and
Hmm.
has been something just like in their social circle that they've become,
Hmm.
known for. And that is a big part of their TikTok presence. And the advice that they give is
Hmm.
very much to do with like navigating our culture and navigating our economy.
Hmm.
So, I felt like there was a lot of alignment there between
Hmm.
Madeline's values, my values, and a
Hmm.
lot of my audience's values.
Hmm.
So, it
Hmm.
just felt like a
Hmm.
good a marriage for us.
Hmm.
And, my goal with the podcast is very similar to what I think Madeline's goal with the book is. It's to give good information and also help people feel less alone in a culture, I think, that
Yeah.
benefits a lot from us isolating and
Feeling,
feeling
yeah.
like, we're the only ones struggling.
Hmm. Hmm.
When, the culture, as we know, so many people are struggling.
Yeah. And feel shamed,
Hmm.
the doubt, the insecurities around circumstances that really aren't under their control. I love Madeline. I found her during the lockdowns.
Hmm.
And I was like, there's a little radical I love.
Hmm.
Um, because she had the same epiphany I did, but I was older. And I was like, I was about 36 when I went, wait, if the only people making money are the bad guys, it's never going to get better,
Yeah.
you
And
know?
the conversation, it really actually, that was one of the most surprising things about the book, is that considering her politics,
Hmm.
I assumed that the company, which is called Tunnel Vision, was started, with that kind of ideology playing into how it was set up. And honestly, it was just a matter of, it was like a side business that she
Hmm.
started because they were like getting, poorly paid. And in the fashion
Hmm.
industry, it's very
It's
exploitative.
horrendous.
Yeah. So it was like, I need this side money. And then there came a certain point in life where they lost their partner tragically
Hmm.
by suicide due to
Hmm.
financial issues. And so they were kind of back at square one in a lot of ways. And that's when the business kind of took front and center, like, well, I need to build this up because this is the asset that I have. And
Hmm.
it became a matter of convenience, but it has an interesting way of operating because everybody that works at the company, regardless of role, makes the same income. They
Yeah.
they split the profits from the company between employees evenly. So it's kind of novel in that sense. You don't hear a ton of companies that do things like that. And so that was one of the reasons that I was attracted to them as a person on TikTok, because I was like, this is somebody that was living their values in a really interesting way. I think a lot of times we, encounter people in certain spaces that, yeah, maybe they've read a lot of theory, but like, what are they actually doing out in the world? And I don't think it's one or the other. I think it's both. I think it's both. And Madeline is very well read and very highly intelligent person. And I think acknowledges that, intelligence is certainly one of the reasons why they've been able to pull themselves out of poverty to, a pretty, lower middle class for Los Angeles lifestyle. So I think that's a real achievement. And
no, she could be a lot higher if she wasn't socially conscious. And she's figured out what her enough is.
Exactly. Well, and that was a big theme in the book is, when Madeline moved out of Fresno, where, she lived on a side of town where everybody was poor. And so it didn't really occur to her that there was something amiss, because it was just the way things were. And then once they got out of that kind of smaller pond, starting to encounter people that, seemed poor, and then would go to their parents' house and be like, how come you have like a ballroom and, like all this stuff, you're okay. So these people are quote unquote comfortable. They're extremely wealthy.
Right.
And just understanding the language that people were using was not actually really reflective of their actual finances.
Yeah.
Which is a common experience in LA, I can tell you that.
Yeah. Oh, no, it is in a lot of places. I remember when I was starting from nothing the second time. Woo, Pluto transits. People tell me, I worked really hard and I started from nothing. My parents loaned me $60,000. And I was like, I came back to America with 2 kids. This was the second start over. Third start over, I did get a divorce settlement, but it was a very, again, modest sum of money, but it was still better than I did coming back to the States with my kids with $50 and nothing else. So I was like, no, there's a difference. But I learned really quickly that I had the privilege of having been raised upper working class or lower middle class, and I could speak the system language. And that was 99. And I was like, oh, okay, I see this. I see why I can get somewhere. And helped people. But that's why I like Madeline. I was like, oh my God, I love what she's doing. I love what she's teaching. And when you decided to do your podcast episode, I was like, holy shit, that's amazing. It was so good. Such a good episode. You and Jen just nailed it.
Yeah, thank you. It was so much, it was really fun to just talk about somebody that, we have that much alignment with. We talk about a lot of people, and it's funny because I've gotten some heat for talking about people that were, I guess, controversial to some people. And, I had to explain, like, I don't know if you know this, but people can observe other people without necessarily approving of everything they do. But, sometimes you got to be real explicit with this stuff, I guess.
You do. Back in 2016, when I was calling the election in Facebook groups and I was calling for Trumpty Dumpty, everybody was accusing me of liking him. And I was like, I have thought that man was gross since I was in high school, which was a long time ago. He was just had the transits. We don't have to like people to look at them and dissect their charts. But speaking of charts, now with the Cap Moon and Cap Mars in traditional, even in modern traditional, it isn't a surprise she has business and is building things. But the fact that she's socially aware and socially conscious would be a shock to some astrologers that aren't great at understanding that Capricorn can very much be the big daddy energy of looking out after the whole of the family. It's really kind of cool to me as an older astrologer to see younger people working on a little bit of that higher expression of the signs. What else in her chart makes her a little more socially aware?
Well, she's a Leo sun and Mercury,
Mm.
and her Leo Mercury is in the 11th house. And I do
Okay.
think that she's a very forward thinking person.
Yeah.
And, she is progressively minded. And I think she takes a lot of pride in being that way. And, she's also part of her upbringing. Their parents are both like, mom was described as a little bit on the goth end of things, and dad was a more punk hardcore kind of guy. So, it's funny too that I also have that in common with Madeline, is that my parents were also like super in the music scene. That was my childhood. And so I really click on that level. Like, I just
I
feel like
love
we
that.
we get each other on a certain level. And so, I think people underestimate, and Jen and I have had a lot of conversations about it, but there's a strong connection between a lot of these music scenes, especially, before internet. This was a way to build community in a strong
100%.
way.
And it let you know where you fit. Like, depending on what you listened to, that's who you were. You were the music you listened to. It was a political statement.
Yeah.
People didn't just listen to, there was popular music. That's the stuff they'll be like the top 10 of the 1980s or whatever. But if you had specific political views, you dressed in the attire. That's how you knew where people fit, was the music they listened to. So that's why you'll hear me say no big hair music.
Yeah.
I did not. I was not a big hair. I was
Yeah.
underground, which is not really alternative, but
Hmm.
it kind of became that. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I
big
think in that,
shock.
right? Well, in especially in punk and hardcore music, and especially kind of the earlier stuff, there was a lot of countercultural statements being made, and it was a space that really thrived on being countercultural in a lot of ways. And so I, like, as a young person, I really connected with this type of music that was expressing things that were political, that I believed I wasn't hearing anywhere else in the culture. And so I believe that it would probably be similar for Madeline in the way that they grew up and being
Probably, yeah.
around that music. So I do think, that combined with the economic situation that they grew up in, that all has a radicalizing effect when you deal with, wanting for more and not having, enough. I think it
Right. And
becomes,
it's not just more jeans or the right accessories or the right,
hmm
iPad or whatever, but it's
yeah.
like basic needs, having
Well,
housing,
yeah.
you
And
know.
punk, punk before the days of, Hot Topic or whatever, punk aesthetic was something that was, an amalgamation of a lot of people that were poor or working class were in that scene, so the
Same, goth was
reason,
the same. Goth was
yeah.
not rich kids. What the
Hmm.
stuff they show in like the memorabilia, those kids with their real goth was thrift store clothes,
Exactly.
and it
Yes.
wasn't cool to go thrifting at
No, it
all.
wasn't. It
It
wasn't.
was
And even when I was a kid, it was
mm-hmm,
poor people shit. And I did the same thing. I got tons of clothes.
mm-hmm,
My grandma was like a huge thrift
mm-hmm,
shop person, yard sale person. And it was, because of poverty. It was because I
mm-hmm.
grew up from a family that there was not enough, in family. So we have a different relationship to resources, and I think an
Mm-hmm.
ingenuity that is, to me, like the essence of
Mm-hmm.
punk. I think when you get really down to it, I don't think it's
Yeah,
I don't personally believe that somebody that is super wealthy and has always been is ever going to really understand what it really means to be a punk
no,
person. But
no, no, no.
because
That's
the
like when all those rich kids were playing poor, doing their
mm-hmm,
van life. If you
yeah,
can run home to mommy and daddy's guest house, you ain't poor.
yeah, if you have designer,
Mm-hmm.
punk clothes, it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like
Mm-hmm.
hmm.
I used to really upset my kids when they were young, when Hot Topic was big back in the 2000s, right?
Hmm.
Um, we'd go and I'd be like, this isn't goth or punk. And I'd be muttering like, this isn't goth or punk. This isn't a
Yeah,
fucking mall. This isn't a
true.
fucking mall. And my daughter would be like, Mom, because she's like 12, Mom,
Mhm.
stop. I'm like, I'm not gonna stop because it's not fucking punk or I'll show you. And I
Yeah.
wasn't either one. I wasn't punk or goth specifically. I did dress a little goth aesthetic a little bit,
Mhm.
but I wasn't from those social classes.
Mm-hmm.
I had a modicum of privilege. And so, like I said, I was more underground
Yeah.
and very leftist, but it was more like U2 wasn't the big thing yet. Um,
Mm. Yeah.
they were still underground when I got them. And then they got into the popular, but yeah, I was not, because I didn't come from that background.
Mm.
And it was really clear. Now I have friends
Mm-hmm.
from all backgrounds. But it was a very serious thing. We do things very differently today.
Yeah.
Um, on the topic of liberating, though, we want
Mm-hmm.
to, using astrology as a tool for liberation. So we've just talked about these people with these views are kind of having an 11th house Mercury totally gives her that social, bend. But how can average people, like our listeners, not average, but they're all extraordinary, but how can, I don't mean average as in less than, but average as in don't know much about astrology,
Mm-hmm.
right? How can we frame as astrologers some astrology in ways that does help free people from some social confines? Like we don't have tower records to go to and check new things out and have a mind-blowing moment listening to a record. We can play through Spotify, but as we know, algorithms are highly curated.
Mm.
It's not as easy to discover things anymore.
Oh, yeah.
So how do we defeat the algorithm in ourselves? What are some of your thoughts?
I think that, my strategy with that has been partly putting things in a place where the algorithm cannot touch it. So, the podcast, I think, is less algorithmically driven than,
Mhm.
say TikTok or Instagram. But so I've, I put more of the things that I really want to say on the podcast. And I
Mhm.
also over in Patreon because it's,
Same. It's
it's a safe
protected.
space. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's under, my observation and the people's that are ostensibly there to support me. So, you
Mhm.
know, it's a safer
Mhm.
place. It's not, you don't have to dig for information the way that you do with an algorithm
Yeah.
often. So,
Yeah. Um, that's been one of the things that's been a problem. I got hit hard this week,
yeah.
actually over the last 2 weeks.
Hmm.
And normally I'll say, oh, you're not really shadow banned. No, I really got shadow banned, as in I shared videos that I made to people like you that I'm
Hmm.
mutuals with, and it said video unavailable.
So weird.
And it wasn't even political.
Mm.
And that made me like beyond angry. It scared me because it was just me saying an astrology chart doesn't show gender. And that's the truth. It doesn't. We can't see the biological sex. We can't see the gender. We can't. So
Yeah.
how is that political? Well, it is. And so I
Yeah,
was like, wow.
gender has
Mm-hmm.
been completely politicized by the right. To even
Mm-hmm.
have a conversation where gender is even a topic, just the discussion of
Yeah.
it itself is in itself controversial because of the way that it has been politicized. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because they're saying that it's just, there is nothing to discuss essentially.
Yeah.
Boys are blue and girls are pink, and that's all we get. You know what I mean? It's like it's so
Right.
reductive and stupid.
It
So
is.
that's where we're
And
at.
so, yeah, well, and it there's a bigger thing at hand. But we have personal algorithms, our social cultural training, and like when you were talking about Madeline and her journey, she was showing, and I kind of have a feeling since you told me what house you said 11th house for Leo.
Yeah, she's got a 12th house sun. Another
Mm,
exciting part of her chart is she's got a first house Libra Venus. So that I think also plays
mm,
into the social
mm-hmm,
justice warrior
mm-hmm.
aspect of who they are.
Ooh, where's her Pluto? Is it in the second house?
Yes.
Okay, so that really proves that. See, having Pluto and Scorpio in the second house it makes you so resilient financially.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
she's been able to rise up through the ashes. So never believe, listeners, that having Pluto in the second house is a bad thing. It actually makes you a badass,
Mm-hmm.
makes you able to really be a financial force. And that could be for good. We have to kind of divest ourselves of the idea that money is bad, because if we don't, again, the only people who have it are the jerks out there. So I was curious about that because,
Mm.
yeah. So anyway, when we're looking at our own placements, and when you're working with a client, Kaycee, and people really believe that like they're stuck, they don't, people don't understand how dynamic they are as people a
Mm.
lot of times. And when I say astrology can liberate or it can free us and free us from an algorithm of social conditioning, what comes to mind for you? How do you show people that in themselves?
I think kind of the foundational thing for me is just that energy expresses in so many different ways. And I've had a couple people as guests on my podcast who
Hmm.
know about next to nothing about
Hmm.
astrology, which has been kind of funny for me. But the way that I explained to one of my guests was that it was like music, and there are high notes
Hmm.
and there are low notes, and you are the conductor of your own energy.
Hmm.
Therefore,
Hmm.
you have the ability to create a symphony with
Hmm.
your chart. And
Hmm.
it is a matter of how you decide to wield the energy. And I think when you look at it that way, like think about if you're composing a piece of music as a musician, I mean, you have all of the, you know, range in the world if
Hmm.
you have the ability. So it's like,
Hmm.
which direction do you want to take it in? And I think that a lot of people come to astrology thinking that it's very predeterministic and it's very
Hmm.
confining. And it's so funny because, to me, it's the opposite when you really
Hmm.
understand the real shit.
Hmm.
Um,
Well, you were taught by somebody who progressed the interpretations. Most people do not. And they do use it as like from this social cultural mindset. That's why I say I teach progressive evolutionary astrology, because we look at things as a spectrum, but the average astrologer does not.
which
They
is
look at,
why
mhm,
which is why it didn't really click for me until I came across you, because none of that shit makes any sense to me. Why would
right.
I already came out of a childhood where I was told, to the T what I was supposed to be doing, what it was supposed to look like. I am so beyond done. And I think as the time goes by, I'm post Saturn return now. I just give less of a shit every day. You know what I mean? I wake up every day with a little bit less of the cultural programming weighing on me, because I can just see
Mm-hmm.
it's limited me, it's made me unhappy. I want to be happy. I want
Mm-hmm.
to live a good life. I want to
Mm-hmm.
enjoy my life. And I think for those of us who have had a lot of challenges early on in our life, maybe some Cap moons, because I think it's funny that Capricorn placements often seem to age in reverse, some of us, because I had so much responsibility, going on in my childhood, and just this feeling of the world weighing on me, that
Mm-hmm.
now I'm like, free me,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
free me, let me
Mm-hmm.
enjoy my
Mm-hmm.
life. And I so desperately like want to offer that to people. I'm not going to force it
Mm-hmm.
on anybody, but I'm like, hey, this is something that has worked really well for me, and just showing you all the possibilities. And to me, that's really what liberation is. Look at all the options that you have.
Yeah.
Look at all the ways that you can move through the world, express yourself, how you can be, the choices that you can make, who you can do things with. I mean, you know, an astrology chart is like an infinite kaleidoscope of possibilities.
Mm-hmm. I love that.
And
Infinite kaleidoscope of possibilities. That's a
it's
beautiful
Pi-
statement.
it's
Mm-hmm.
Pisces season, huh?
It's Pisces
Um,
season.
yeah, it's creative, and that was something that you taught me, and that really made a huge impact on me. Viewing life as a creative project in and of itself. As
Mm-hmm.
me as a creative person, I was like, fuck yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
can do that.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm. It's a work
Nothing
in progress. Yeah.
exactly. And it's
Mm-hmm.
it's it's a project, it's an ongoing project, and we are
Mm-hmm.
always refining. And artists can be hard on themselves, but
Mm-hmm.
how many times do we see a piece of artwork that some artist is like, it's not that great, and everyone
Right.
else is like, this is changing our life.
My
Sometimes we're too
dear,
close.
right. My dear, dear, dear friend who goes by Granny Annie is 30 years older than me. And I was so harsh on my own artistic work. And she would say, oh, put your rejected children away and come back to them later, and you'll see them with fresh eyes. And we could do that with our own lives as well. Oh my gosh, Kaycee. So now it's one thing if you get to spend your days thinking about astrology and all of its different realms of expression. And it's another when you're new to it and all of it seems kind of big,
Mm,
and it can be kind of hard um, to kind of know what to ask yourself because we've been told, like how, even though we know there's neuroplasticity with our
mm,
brains, that trauma, yes, changes the brain, but healing also changes the brain, and that it's possible. Um, so we've have all these messages that we butt up against. How do you work with clients to, like, do you offer suggestions? Do you ask them questions? Do you provoke thought? Do you give them a range of options? Like this could, I always say I'm like an optometrist. Is it one or two, three or four? Just to show people there's a range of expression. What do you do there?
yeah, I find myself, a range of expression. I'll usually kind of lead with maybe what I think it might be, based
Mm-hmm.
on my assessment of the chart. I'll be like, is that the one?
Mm-hmm.
And kind of go from there. But I kind of just feel through the reading, and I do it very intuitively. Like, I take a lot of notes when I prep for reading, so I have all my insights in front of me. But I definitely like having that back and forth with a client, because if there's something that I notice that they are taking a particular interest in, and me, I can maybe offer a little bit more in that area, because of course I want people to get what they need out of the reading. And I do like to show options, but I also like to show them, especially I feel like I do this a lot with rising signs and readings,
Mm-hmm.
because it does, there can be these different kind of flavors. And I will talk about, like, okay, I see it often looking like this. And it's funny because I often feel people being like, I can tell, like, I'll start with the one that I don't think that they are,
Mm-hmm.
quite like, and they'll be like, oh, that's not me. And then I'll get to the one and I'm like, but I think you're more like this. I kind of fake it
Right,
out a little bit.
right, 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 right. Well, you got to put it. I mean,
Yeah,
everything is performance art.
a little bit. Yeah.
We
And
have to have some showmanship in our readings.
Exactly. Exactly. And
Mm-hmm.
that's one of my favorite parts of readings, is that I do enjoy kind of freaking people out a little bit with, like, how detailed it can get. And they're
Mm-hmm.
just like blinking, like,
Right. How
how
did you
did
know
you,
that?
how did you get, but I really enjoy explaining that, it is a spectrum of expression, that
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
the reason that you maybe hear things, stereotypes that don't apply to you, is because you're not a stereotype. You're a whole chart.
Yeah.
You're a whole,
You're a whole
mix of
human
energy.
being.
Mm-hmm.
So now, speaking of, you've got the podcast Petty Astrology, where you kind of address social issues from a different lens. A lot of times you're looking at popular culture and things people might think are superficial or petty, and you're actually showing where it has social and cultural relevance, which I
Mm.
totally dig that. It's why I'm a producer.
Yes.
And speaking of why I'm a producer, is because I'm a producer on your Patreon. I help sponsor your podcast. I believe that's one of the greatest things we can do to help liberate ourselves, is support people and projects that matter to us at a grassroots level. And they haven't choked us from doing that yet, and we might as well do that. Um, and help make the world a little better place to get those unique voices heard and people seen. So that's one of my passions, and you line up with that. Um, but you're also in your Patreon, you're going to be releasing a book soon. And as as uh you were taught by somebody who believes that we need to make astrology practical. Not
Mm.
everybody's going to be an astrologer, just like
Mm-hmm.
not everybody's going to be an Olympic runner. Not
Yeah.
everybody's going to be an opera singer or a punk rocker. but they may have an interest in it, and everybody wants to know how to do better in life. So you're putting a book out to your patrons soon about what?
So this book is going to be about how to use astrology to find community. And that is something that you and I have been talking about so much, because with Pluto and Aquarius, we're really going to be looking at the need to kind of come together to work together. And even pre-astrology, this was something that I was very focused on with the
100%.
politics and climate crisis. Honestly, it's a huge issue. We're seeing, you know, all the ways that we have not been cooperating with each other, all the ways that we've kind of driven into our kind of separate corners in a certain way, and it's very dysfunctional. So, you know, my goal with the podcast and with what I'm doing with astrology, I really like the fact that we are in this moment where Pluto is in Aquarius. I feel like I've been called up, you know, for service. That's how I feel right now. I have a fucking Mars in Aquarius.
So is Pluto on it yet?
It's a degree away. It's
right.
a degree away.
So it's activating. You're activating now.
Yes. Yes, ma'am. Yes, I am. So I have been, it's been a process of me coming to terms with that. And honestly, just believing that I could do it, that I could meet the moment, and that I had, you know, the sauce, as I say.
You got the sauce, kid. You do.
So I want to help people find where they are going to fit in, because everybody is different. We all have our different interests. We all have our different skills. We all have our different abilities. And one of the beautiful things about astrology is that when I sit down with a client and I look at their chart, it allows me to talk to them like I've known them for much longer than I have. I mean, I regularly meet with strangers, and I'm like, I know so much about you. Right. You know what I mean? It cuts, you know, the work down, to be honest. I mean, and I'm looking at Pluto and Aquarius and the collective call that we're receiving, because it's not just me. We're all being called to step up and meet the moment and come together. And so my goal with what I'm working on is I want to give people very simple tools as non-astrologers to take a look. You're going to have to, I'll walk you through making a chart, but I'm going to show you how you can kind of narrow that focus down, because it can be so overwhelming. You're like, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help. And, you know,
it's too big. It's too big for me. I'm too little. Yeah.
And where do I start? I have so many different interests, or I don't know where I fit in. And so my goal with this is I'm going to take the astrology and I'm going to make it very simple and give you, you know, it's not going to be a one-to-one thing, because not everybody is going to be the exact same, but I want to give people a way to kind of narrow it down, so that gives them some things to think about as they decide how they want to get involved, and, you know, some tools and resources to kind of support them in doing that. So
I really love that.
Yeah, it's been something, it came to me, you know, months back, and it just feels really urgent. You know, it's, as you well know, you know, we have a lot of stuff that we want to do, but this feels like really important and really
it's timely. What's up on deck right now.
So I want to get people, you know, I know people are activated. I know people are looking for more ways to, you know, get involved in a longer term way. And so my goal, and, you know, I think just culturally, we're just taught about maybe voting, or, you know, you see marches in the streets, and there's so many more options for ways to plug in, to do mutual aid. So I'm kind of giving people some ideas about where to start based on their personal astrology.
I love that. That's so useful. That's kind of the direction I'm going in, as you know. Just like, we don't have time at this point. Like, not to scare anybody and not to be a Debbie Downer, I can't prepare you any more than I prepared you in the last 3 years, you know, almost 4 now, and 20 some in other spaces. We have to hit the ground running at this point, and you're going to learn from experience. So you might as well shortcut it with what I call applied astrology. And that's what Kaycee's offering in her Patreon. Same here with healing the money wound using astrology, which is great. It's helping people get over that guilt, blame, shame, whatever hangups, blocks, whatever, and build a stronger foundation, understanding, because finances and self-esteem fall in the same place in the astrology chart. you heal one, you heal the other. And
Mm-hmm.
you have to know these things. So I love that you're moving with community, because you have been a community activist for a very long time, long before you and I ever met. I was just speaking the right lingo to get you into my mitts.
I was, you were the
Little
snake
Pied
charmer,
Piper, snake
and I,
charmer. Here we go. I was like, liberate, get rid of these
yes,
motherfuckers.
I
But
was blown away. I know I've said it many times on this podcast, but I was like, this is the lady for me.
there we go. Hey, I've been very blessed by all the students that come in. People come in for a lot of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
There's because I'm a complex critter and I speak
Yeah,
a different language every 3 sentences.
that's that
But
Gemini Venus. You got,
that Gemini
you do
Venus,
have
right?
something for everybody, and you know a lot of different people.
I lived in a library when I was a kid. I read the whole library by the time I was 14, from 3 to 14, except the
Yeah.
engineering books, because I didn't get it. So I didn't read the engineering books.
Right.
That part wasn't interesting to me. But I
Mm-hmm.
read all of the humanities and all of the literature and philosophy, metaphysics, theology, all of that fun stuff. I was a weird kid.
Yeah, same,
Much
same.
much like Capricorns, Cancers too can kind of, that
Yeah,
axis can go.
right. Yeah, we're aging in
So
reverse.
yes, aging in reverse. It pays off when you're almost 55,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm almost 55. I'm going to say it that way.
It's more fun.
It is, or double nickel, but nobody even knows what a nickel is anymore. I'm like, do we even have nickels?
Oh my God.
Um, anyway, oh my gosh. As always, it's wonderful to have you on the show. You can book readings with Kaycee at wokeastrology.com/book dash online. I'll put that link in the show notes. You can find her podcast, Petty Astrology, on all of your favorite podcast players. And then you can go to the links in the show notes where you can find her Patreon, and you too can be a producer. She has other levels as well, including a new moon manifestation circle, so which is super fun. And of course, her podcast support. Well, Kaycee, it's been real.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Rock on, my friend, rock on. All right, we're answering some more questions from patrons of the Awake Space, and the first one up is from Steve of Finland. Hi, Laurie. Could you talk a little bit about composite charts and synastry charts? Do you have a preference for one over the other, or are both useful to consider? That's a really great question and timely, since next Saturday I'm teaching an introduction to relationship astrology. So let's cover that a little bit. First of all, we can do synastry with any kind of relationship. All right. Not just our close partnerships, our spouses, our life partners, our boyfriends, girlfriends, them friends. You can do synastry with your pets. Okay. A synastry chart is just comparing two natal charts together and seeing how the energy operates between the two people. How are those planets interacting? Because think about it. We're all walking transits. If your birth chart is a slice of time and space representing that being crystallized into physical form, right? You. Okay, so your birth chart is a snapshot of time. Okay. So is somebody else's. You're walking transits. You are time capsules. Isn't that cool? Isn't it cool that we're time capsules? And so when we compare those two, that's called synastry. Okay. We can actually compare more than two people. I've often done like real estate teams. I've worked for small businesses. I've worked with their staffing. You could do it obviously for romance, even when you're just dating. Back in my dating days, not all that long ago, because I didn't really date much when I was young. I just fell into relationships. Hello, Libra Moon. But when I did decide to date, in my elder years. I won't gross you people out. But anyway, half of that time, I made sure I got people's birth information. I ran the charts and I kind of played a little game, right? Sometimes it was also looking at the chart. I was like, this is going to suck. Or, ooh, I wonder what that's going to be like. And then the other half of it, I flew blind and met the person, then asked for it. If there was any kind of connection at all. Or if I was curious, even if I didn't like them, I'd be like, hey, I know we didn't get along, but could I have your birth time? I want to check this out. Because, astrologers are as astrologers will do. So synastry charts are compare and contrast. Okay. Composite charts I use specifically for serious relationships. These are people who are living together, have a commitment, an agreement, a very serious relationship. They don't have to be officially married, but they're on the lease together. They've signed things. Okay. You don't have to be married to have a serious agreement. Or business partners. Because that'll show how the unit operates and what the goal of that unit together is. Now, I don't think people are, if people don't understand the natal chart very well and just have a basic understanding, doing synastry is actually it's advanced astrology. It's not like an intermediate level even. However, as I always say to my intermediate students, you really shouldn't be reading for other people right now, but I know you're going to read for your friends because when I was at your stage, I read for my friends too. And so can't stop people. And I'm tired of trying. So I'm going to teach a relationship astrology class and explain this stuff and give you some pointers before I get into teaching something a little more complex down the road. So next Saturday, I'm going to do a little 2-hour workshop. So you can check that out. Patrons get a very, very special discount that comes out today, Monday. So keep your eye out for that, patrons. Steve, you read my mind. But yeah, composites are kind of cool. I use midpoints for my composites. And that's a very different read. You don't read it like you do a natal chart quite in the same way. It's a little mundane, but it's very cool. It's very cool. And I can tell you, my boyfriend and I, who've known each other for quite a long time, we took a break. Well, I took a break. And we came back together in 2021, and his and my synastry never made sense to me. I looked at it as an astrologer. I'm just like, I had none of the classic signs that you would think of in a romantic relationship. And there's a ton of chemistry. There's a ton of compatibility between us. But when you look at our natal charts, and I even begged him, I'm like, are you sure all your birth data is correct? And it wasn't until I threw it into the composite that I went, oh, there she is. This is where, because when he and I are together, from the day we met, everybody thinks we've been together for 30 years. The day we met, people were like, oh, how long have you guys been married? And I was like, whoa, no. Why did you use that M word? So, just met him. I was about to crawl out a window. But, and it shows up in the composite chart. So it's fascinating. So it can be really interesting to look at. So I'm going to go over stuff like that in the class on Saturday, but I have a hard time recommending references because I have to have read them to like them. And I don't even remember which one. It might have been a Noel Till book from the 80s or 90s. Oh, there's an Oda doing stuff to interrupt my podcast. All right, let's go to the next question. That was great. Thank you for reading my mind, knowing I was going to do this, Steve. Oh my goodness. Okay. Alexia. Are there transits that can signal a raise or a job promotion? I'm hoping my husband will get news soon about a promotion he's been promised. I was hoping for some insight on what you might look out for astrologically to support that. Oh, I appreciate you too, Alexis. Sorry, I said Alexia to start with. It's Alexis. Lori, clean your glasses. My glasses are filthy. I noticed that on one of my TikToks. I'm so embarrassed. I don't notice until I'm like, do I have cataracts? No, I don't. I just need to clean my glasses. So looking for that kind of thing is really tricky. It's not straightforward. Okay, so it could be a transit to the 7th house. It could be a transit like in your own chart. It could be in his chart. It could be something going through the 6th, like a Venus, maybe a Saturn transit as well, because maybe with promotions tend to come a lot more responsibility. The 7th house could be triggered for a contract. It just really depends. And honestly, I'm going to tell you, sweetie, it's not ethical of me to say it. And I have been teaching classes on this. So I'm about to start kind of like another tier where we can just sit and talk astrology for those who understand it. I'm just trying to figure out how to qualify it because it's not going to be beginning level astrology. You know, I already have Planet of the Month Club for that. This will be for people who've like taken my intermediate classes and they've studied transits with me or aspect. You know, we've gone in deeper just because the learning curve is steep. Okay, it's steep and people need to be able to, you know, talk shop freely at different levels. So I've been trying to think of how I can support that. And so I'll be talking about that throughout March. But yeah, look at it could be like, look at Jupiter, look at Saturn. Saturn isn't always bad. Like if Saturn's going through the 7th house, it could be a contract, you know, more responsibility. It could be 10th house. It just really depends. Really depends. I hope for your sake he gets that promotion and a good sized raise to go with it. So you can also look at your 8th house, 7th house, 8th house for you too. Could be it. JC, what's the deal with astrocartography? I get the basic gist, but is it an accurate tool? I'm sure like astrology, it is only as accurate as the astrologer, but as a modality, I've heard mixed things and I would love your take on it. Well, first of all, it is astrology. It's not separate from astrology. Astrocartography is astrology. It is locational astrology put out on a map. So instead of drawing separate charts for the location, it's just like how the locations show up for your chart. It is only as good as the person reading it. I don't think it takes a terribly long time to read an astrocartography thing, so I incorporate it into my readings, but I do not do separate readings. I don't think it takes like 45 minutes or an hour. I think it takes 5 minutes to go, yep, good spot. There could be better. So I use it in like my career life path readings or my astro energy reading. Not really my astro energies, really my career life path. When people are thinking, do I need to move across the country, or I'm not happy where I'm at, and we're taking longer to find out what they want because that's a deeper dive, right? So I do that in my career life path readings, and it is accurate. If you want to know more about astrocartography, look up books by Jim Lewis. He was a really smart man who created that modality, and it has, because basically he was really good at math, and he was like, oh, hey, if I just put all this out on a map, because otherwise we're drawing separate charts, and I still draw a locational chart, like I'll relocate people. So that's all astrocartography is it just shows if you were relocated, how would that impact you? How would that change the chart layout? So it's kind of cool. You could also look at, there's a lot more to it than just that, but it's very cool. It's a cool tool. I like to use it, but I don't think it deserves like it's a whole reading if you know what you're doing. So, but to each their own. So good questions. Good questions. All right, I'll do one more, and then I have another surprise for you guys. We're going to start this week off on a high note. Because we're going to talk about the new moon, too. God, this is a long episode. All right, Rachel, I would love to know how astrology can be seen in a tarot reading. I've heard other tarot readers mention things about astrology showing up in their spreads, but I don't understand how they come to that conclusion or the significance of making those connections. Rachel, that would be because they're liars. Astrology is very, very old. Tarot is not old. It's not anywhere close as old. It was developed in Italy. It was a card game. I know there's differing stories out there, but it is not thousands of years old. It has astrological symbolism in it, but that would be akin to like pop astrology. So there is no historical real connection. I read tarot. I started with tarot. I always say tarot was my gateway drug and got into astrology later. Now, here's what a tarot reader can do. They can tune in and be like, so for people who have Leo suns, what do they need to know? You could do that and get a verifiable answer. But there's a lot of people out there on the internet who talk about things they don't understand when it comes to astrology. And back in my day, we stayed in our lane. Just saying. So, no. I know there are people who like to equate the two. I just not on my watch. Not as a real astrologer. I think it just gets so slippery. It gets so slippery. And again, I've been reading tarot longer than I've been an astrologer. I still don't sit there doing tarot readings because that's not what I do professionally. I can do it, but that's not what I do. So I think people need to stop trying to, like, it bothers me. It bothers me. And I know there's books that try to claim it's ancient. It's just, it's not backed up in the astrological literature. Let's put it that way. All right. Now I've made people angry. I think we should talk about the new moon. But first, I have a special guest. So I'll end the podcast with the new moon. And patrons, you'll get your new moon special episode this week. I don't know who needs to hear this, but Matilda, the medium, is with us today at the Awake Space. Hi, Matilda.
Hi, Laurie. How are you?
Well, I'm wonderful now that you're here.
I'm glad to be of service today. I bring light and sparkles wherever I go.
Do you fart rainbows too?
It's the unicorns that come with me.
Right. Toot, toot. Oh. So, in our little ray of sunshine slut, we're going to be talking and giving some advice because we've made fun of people a little bit in the last couple of times we played around. So now we're going to, I know, but now we're going to help people with some real world. And you've got some really good stuff on this that I think people really need to hear. So when people come to you, they're usually coming to you for a variety of reasons. Have they always thought those through?
No.
Okay.
No. So I offer two different sorts of readings, one of them being mediumship readings, which is, and they involve psychic readings as well. Mm-hmm. And it's about people connecting with the loved ones that they have lost. I have about as much control over which spirit comes through as I do over the humans in my life, which is zero. Or my dog, which is zero. So I will bring through people that you have lost with advice that they are bringing, but I also offer psychic readings, and often people will have no direction to their reading, which sometimes can be a bit, it's good and it's bad because you're going to get whatever spirit give you, but if they don't give you what answers you need, as in direction, then what good is it for you? So if you're wanting to phone up and have a psychic reading and go, I just want whatever spirit want to give me, it's not always the best way, because you're going to get 30 minutes of talking about growing, or they could go down the road of your career when you're wanting to talk about where you're living, or they could go down the road of your love life when you've got no interest in hearing about your love life and you're really about to change jobs and you want advice about that. So coming with a few questions is really advisable, although Spirit can give you infinite information, but is it stuff you want to hear? And so coming with some form of direction helps. Often Spirit will give you the answers before you've asked them. Before you've asked questions, they will give you the information because it's been sitting in your head, but have some form of direction.
Right. So when people are wanting the reading, do you think sometimes they think that Spirit knows better than them and that's why they don't have to give it direction?
I think they think that I'm magic sometimes and that I'm going to read. But I am. Yes, of course I am. The unicorns tell me I'm magic all the time, but you're paying a certain amount of money for a reading. And I'm always going to prove that I have that connection. Those first 5 minutes are about us having a connection. Spirit are giving me, your guides are talking to my guides, and they're giving us information about you and where you may be sitting or questioning things or what situation you're in. And they will often give answers, but they don't always tell you what you want to know. They will tell you what you need to know. And sometimes that doesn't sit comfortable because there's always a lesson. Whenever you have a reading with me, there's always a lesson that you have to go away with, or information that you have to learn. But if you want specific information and you're paying the price to have a reading, once you have a connection with me, once you're guaranteed and you know that our guides are connected, ask your questions. Otherwise, you're wasting your money. And you're going to get to that end of the reading. And we are generous with our time, but if you get to the 30 minutes of a 30-minute reading and go, I've got 4 questions and I haven't asked them, you're going to get shorter answers.
Yeah.
So it's really important that you have something in mind. And I have readings with people. It doesn't happen very often, but I will pick up the phone and I will speak to someone. I'll go, why are you having a reading? You're in a really good place. You're comfortable. You're in that, like, you're in control of your life. And I'll pick it up immediately and say, is there something you really need to know? And they'll go, no, I just wanted to talk to you, which is lovely. And it's very, very flattering. But I just think, you should have saved it up when you had some questions, because they will come in. So it's really good to have some form of direction. Unless, of course, it's all about mediumship and you're wanting to have that confirmation that Spirit are around you, where you can have questions and we'll do our best to answer them. But, when you're having a psychic reading and you've paid the money, just have a bit of direction. It's really good for you.
Yeah. Yeah. And do you think that helps funnel the energy in a certain way?
Well, yes, because imagine I'm linking into your spirit guides and my spirit guides, and they're talking about your career, and you've got a change of job coming up, but they're talking about this whole new place you may be going to. And in the back of your mind, you're going, but I'm moving to Boston in 2 months, and they're talking about a new job. Well, that new job could be in Boston, but I haven't made the connection because I don't know everything. So asking, am I, do you see me moving, or is there a place I should move? Please don't ask me what state you should be moved to, because I do have, there is a real okay, I'm going to qualify this now because there's a real difference between somebody having a reading and being happy to hear what Spirit have to say and then asking their questions, and somebody booking a reading and going, when am I going to meet my husband? Where am I going to live? What job should I have? And they're firing questions at me. That I find very disconcerting. And if your wife stood behind you firing those questions at you, that's even more disconcerting. Because often I'll have the husband will have a reading that the wife's booked and the wife's asking the questions behind them.
No, that's not okay. That's so invasive too. That's people can be very disrespectful of their partners if they're doing that. I don't care if people are in the same room, but I read like that person is the only person in the room.
I don't like anyone else in the room. If I'm doing a reading for one person, I have to have that one person in the room. If your partner's there and someone's yelling questions, it can disrupt the energy.
Oh, I don't allow, but I'll stop the other person from asking questions. I won't accept that.
Yeah, but I pick up on the energy.
But I won't. Oh, you do? Yeah. See, that's why I do astrology. I shut it out.
Yeah, that's why you do astrology.
Yeah, I can't. I would lose my bloody mind if I did what you did.
I've lost my mind. I lost my mind a while ago. But be prepared with your readings, but don't fire question after question after question, because Spirit are going to give you homework. They're going to give you information that you really need to think about, and some direction you need to think about. So if you're going to pick up the phone and just ask and expect predictions, then you're going to get short shrift from me, because
that's cool.
It makes me cranky.
You do get cranky.
I do get cranky. I am nice though, but I do get cranky.
You're highly compassionate, but you don't put up with nonsense.
I'm very compassionate. I'm very compassionate about the right. Yes, and not that I'm right, but people make sure you do your research.
Yes, that's fair, because it takes a lot of energy to do this.
It takes a lot of energy.
It does.
And we get cranky and tired. And
we do. We do. We get cranky and tired because it is a lot of energy to work with people. I mean, just think, even if you work retail and you're dealing with people all day, you get peopled out. Well, we're dealing with people's lives and emotions and big decisions. You know, these are life altering, like nobody comes to us for no reason.
Nobody comes to us to ask us nice questions.
Well,
it's always life altering, life changing.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's exhausting. And so I take my hat off to anyone that works retail, especially if you work retail at Christmas, when you're also taking on the emotions of other people, because Christmas would be fun, wouldn't it? But I just about have enough. I manage.
You have to deal with ourselves too.
Afternoon naps help.
I would. They do a lot. Are you ready for a game?
Oh yes, please. I love the games.
Right? These are our new favorites. Okay. Collective reading. You
don't like me very much, do you? You just like seeing smoke come out the top of my head.
Right.
I'm not allowed to swear, am I? Oh.
No, we have to be good right now.
We have to be good.
We have to earn our swears.
It's rubbish. Okay, collective reading. I am going to talk to the collective now, and I'm going to channel this message. And this message is going to tell you you're all going to have a wonderful Tuesday. Does that help? I can't take them seriously because you're looking at 200.
Who needs to hear this?
What was that?
I don't know who needs to hear this.
Oh, that was yes. Thank you. That was the start of your I was giving your opening line. You will never catch me listening to, doing, or undertaking a collective reading because I don't believe that they are real or any good.
Mm-hmm.
Lazy spiritualism again.
Oh, I pulled up the wrong thing. You know what I did? I pulled up my astrology chart software. Anyway, I memorized the word or phrase. Celebrity spirit. Celebrity spirit.
It's another bugbear of mine. To speak to a celebrity that has passed over. What was that?
I said I was telling everybody they should see your face.
Yeah.
She's trying not to.
I'm crying and rocking. To connect with a celebrity that has passed over, one must be speaking to one of their loved ones or someone connected to them.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not how it works on the TikTok.
Right.
And I don't make any friends amongst the fake spiritual community when I call them out on that, because I read for celebrities. That's why I'm a celebrity psychic. Not because I'm a celebrity, because I read for celebrities and I bring through their loved ones, and some of them are well known, and it is not something that I would ever put on social media.
Oh my God, no.
Because they do it for likes and follows. It's how they build up their... Oh, yeah. And they do it just in the... Yeah. So if you see someone doing a celebrity reading or claiming to have a connection with a celebrity and doing a reading for them, do yourselves a favor and don't book a reading with them. Because I would say that they haven't done any ethical training to go with their mediumship training that they say that they have.
Right. We're going to do more.
Yes, we are going to do some more.
We're going to do more. We have to educate people. Same with astrology, though. I think a lot of people are really invasive with it, and I will do politicians. I will do leaders in the public eye. But I honestly don't do all entertainers, because what you're seeing is the top of their chart. You're seeing their public face. I don't believe you have a right to their interior life. So until Britney Spears actually published her book, I got asked for years, do Britney. And I took one look at her chart and went, she's been used her whole life. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
And so until she spoke, then I did something on my podcast, but I did not until then, because I was not going to contribute to that.
I made predictions about her, but I didn't go in and do an in-depth. There's so much.
That. I knew she'd win the case. That was clear in the she'd win the case. That I was fine with. But people wanting to know about her, innermost self, that's voyeurism.
We're not gossip columnists. Spiritualism is not about being a gossip columnist. I will look into politicians. I think I said I actually got a strike against my name on TikTok for saying that Trump had a brain full of mashed potato. I wasn't lying, but apparently I was bullying. And that's the worst that he's been called. I don't know. Literally, mashed potato.
I think you should have. I honestly think you should appeal it based on all his losses. But
I did appeal it, and they still held me. I still have a strike against my name for calling him Potato Head.
I've got strikes.
He looks like Mr. Potato Head, doesn't he? He looks like Mr. Potato Head.
He does. He sounds like Mr. Potato Head.
We could, with his fake eyelashes and stuff, we could actually... that'd be a fun game to play. Yeah. Put the things on his head.
You're going to get us in trouble.
He does that. Oh, no. I need to make that now. That'd be quite cathartic, pulling his eyes out.
There you go. Oh, my God. It's a crazy world. But yeah, so ethics, it's a thing.
Ethics is a thing. And we've just shown great ethics with...
Didn't we? Well, There's a difference.
There's a difference. Yeah. Ethics is a thing. And talking to someone that has passed over or pretend, I don't believe they're actually doing it. They're making it up. But what they're telling us cannot be validated. So when you're doing a mediumship reading and you're saying, I've got someone here that's got this, this, and this, someone is able to validate that. If you're just watching it on social media and you're hearing people say things, you've got no loved one validating that information. Mm-hmm. Plus, there's no one giving permission. And how would you like to be, I don't know, Matthew Perry's mother scrolling through TikTok and hearing the things said about him?
Yeah.
Be awful.
Yeah. People forget these are people with real lives and families. Yes. And it's, I think about the humanity involved, and
there isn't much.
Yeah, no. And even, we'll make fun of Trump. I haven't given his inner life.
No, I've made predictions.
I've made predictions, but I haven't talked about certain things. I can see the entirety of him. And even bad people, or people who do bad things, I should say, rather, not bad people, but even people who do bad things, they have affection for the people in their life that may be skewed and they may have challenges, but they have an inner life. We don't have to agree with it for it to be true. That's why I keep telling people we've got to humanize each other. It can be hard when we really don't like somebody. I could say I would not get along with this person at all, but they still have an inner life, and being respectful of that, because you'd want me to do that for you, so.
Absolutely. But when people keep talking about Kate, Princess of Wales.
Oh, yeah.
And what's wrong with her? Why haven't we seen her? Because she's recovering from a surgery. But we haven't seen her since Christmas. It is only February. And it was obviously a major surgery. We don't need to know what about, and I just say, look, Sylvia, do you want your medical records read out on social media? Right. And we can talk about when you had the clap in 1987, Do you want that on social media?
She's a mother and a wife, and it's obvious, she's beyond a public, we're not entitled to everybody's business.
We are not entitled to anybody's business, to be fair, but social media has turned life into a gossip column. And gossip columns have existed for a long time, even back in Rome. So the internet just expanded that, though. I'll argue. Yes, they have just expanded it.
Yeah, because I can tell you, there's a little country called the Seychelles. Long before the internet, if something happened in one country where there was one Seychelles, the Seychelles would know about it 2 minutes later, and they call it the bamboo radio, okay? And I was, true story, constipated. I was pregnant and constipated. Told my husband's auntie, I was 23 years old, told her I need some assistance because I was pregnant and did not wish to bear down. Everywhere I went, the whole island knew.
How embarrassing.
75,000 people offered me green coconut to help me go caca. So it's not just since the internet was invented. I did drink it did help.
I'll remember green coconut for the future.
That's 30 years ago. People are still asking. You okay? So it wasn't just the internet, right? Have you gone? So it's human. It's human to gossip. But yeah.
Yes. I know it's human to gossip, but it's the instant gratification that they want to know and they want to know now.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. We're not gonna give it to them though. No. All right, my dear. It's always a
pleasure as always.
We'll see you next time.
We should do this again.
Yes. All right, let's end this on a positive note. And we do have some light at the end of this week's tunnel, and that is the new moon in Pisces. And it's going to be magical. In fact, it is a very magical new moon because Pisces gives us a special kind of magic. Okay. It's not just delusion. And I've been talking to you guys for a while now about pessimism is not realism. All right. And fear is the misuse of our imagination. We can imagine a better world. We can imagine solutions for ourselves. When I was a little girl and living through some pretty scary things, pretty bitter things, pretty ugly things, things that give nightmares to some people, and used to give nightmares to me. I used to wake up every day thinking, it's got to be better than this. It's got to be better than this. It's that kind of hope we need to have instead of, oh no, it's only getting worse. Because on one hand, as much as the injustice we see in the world, the attempts to control, the authoritarian nature, the autocracies and theocracies vying for control are gaining ground, we are seeing more and more people than I've ever seen in my adult life coming together and meeting one another in community and saying, not on my watch, not today. How is my neighbor? We have people willing to risk it to feed the houseless. We have people, and some people are risking jail to do it, and yet they persevere. We have young people showing up for people they've never met. We have people saying, not in my name. We have people just checking on next door neighbors. And we can do more of this. The more we sit in fear, the more we empower that which we have to fear. And as Franklin Roosevelt once said, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. And that sounds trite and glib, but in my experience, that's really true, because with fear comes paralysis. And this new moon is inviting us to use our imaginations, to tune our tuner, our receiver, and listen for that subtle sound of hope, to look for the helpers, as Mr. Rogers' mother told him to do when he was a young boy. This new moon offers us an opportunity to set intentions for some kind of future well-being, ease, systemic change. And we can look towards that in the full moon. So the new moon will happen at 20 degrees of Pisces on March 10th. I think it's March 10th. It is March 10th. I know better. I write this stuff, but it's like 1:04 a.m. and I taught all day on Sunday. So yeah, 20 degrees of Pisces. Now, there may be a lot of goings on in the world, because the day before, that's why I was questioning myself, March 9th, we have Mercury going into Aries, and that's great. That's great. It's time to have a clear vision. It's time to see with clarity. It is time to say, okay, I know what I know, and I know what I need, and I know how to get there. And it might be a little impulsive, and we might see some crap go on in the outer world and more injustice, because guys, we're just going to. That's what we're living in now, because that's what it's going to take to get people to move forward. But on an individual level, This moon is with an orb. It means it's approaching a conjunction with Neptune. And if there wasn't a better time to make some magic, make a wish. Make a wish and believe it can be true. Look for the best in people. Look for the people doing things that are admirable and honorable and kind and considerate. I'm not saying ignore what's bad. I'm just saying empower what's good. Give your power to the good stuff. Empower the good stuff with your belief. Not like, oh, well, it's good they're trying, but they're going to lose. That's not the attitude to take with this new moon. It's not. It's a special kind of magic. It's got to be better than this. The story can't end this way. Right? As somebody who's written stories their whole life, and I don't always write them to share with other people, creative writing is kind of my special for myself thing. But when I was in high school, I wrote a story, and I was in a morose state of mind, and I was having my existential crisis, as one does. And I wrote a story with the most horrendous ending for the character because I felt I was a little bit without hope myself. I was a lot without hope, actually. I was really tired. I wrote the story in my Patreon about the encounter I had with the young lady in Portland. And it was right around that time where things were just unbearable. Like, I just didn't know how much longer I could take it. And so I wrote this horrendously melodramatic and melancholy story with the protagonist just having the absolutely worst end imaginable. And after I wrote it, I was walking home from school and this thought hit me like a ton of bricks. And it was like, well, if we write stories and we're creating new worlds, I just doomed that character to a very horrendous fate. And I felt this sense of obligation and the weight of the consequences of writing an ending like that. And I thought, you know what? I don't ever want to write an ugly ending again. I want to write stories that have at least a reasonable resolution. They may not always be happy, but there's a reasonable resolution. And that thought that I had at 14 years old, 14 was a big year because that's our first Saturn opposition is right around 14. So we're really making decisions about our life and who we want to be and how we want to be. And it isn't necessarily deliberate choices at that point, but there's some aha moments that happen when we're that age. And I've always been a very pensive person. I've always been thoughtful and a thinker, So I made that decision, and many, many years later, during a really gnarly Pluto transit in 2016, when I was working with a friend of mine, Kirsten, you guys know her in the mystery school, and she was guiding me through kind of a mental exercise because things weren't looking good for your fearless astrologer here. He was dicey, and everything was kind of falling apart. And as we went through this process, at the end, I was like, oh my gosh, I get it. I'm just in the exciting part of the story. It's okay. I never write bad endings. I only write happy endings. And if I'm the author of my life, this is going to end happy. I don't know how, but neither does the character in the book. It's okay. It's just the exciting part. And when my kids were little, I used to explain to them the exciting part in a book are exciting to us, but it's hell on the characters. And so that's what I want you to think about. How can it be better than this? What would be better than this? What can you dream into? What can you lean into? How can it be better than this? It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be gorgeous, but how can your life be better than it is? How can just things around you be better than this? That's what I want you to think of with this energy, okay? It's that sweet. It's that sweet of a new moon. You can certainly make the most of it. Now, if you're a patron, you'll get your new moon through the houses. And we'll make sure you're ready with your intentions for that. But you also have your information in the magazine where I talk about the type of intentions you want to set. And I'm going to leave you with this. Birds singing in the sycamore trees, dream a little dream of me. Say nighty night and kiss me. Just hold me tight and tell me you miss me. While I'm alone and blue as can be. Dream a little dream of me. Dream a little dream of me. And if that's not the mood of this Pisces new moon, I don't know what is. I hope you're reasonably content this week and can hold on to your hope because you helped me hold on to mine.